Alright, so we are live. Let me check if everything is working fine, and thereafter we will start with our today's topic. The book is still the same, that is, Ego is Your Enemy. Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. And this is going to be third live stream on this particular topic or in this particular book. Okay, voice is completely fine. Let me just. Hmm. Today I'm like little bit low in energy. So there are certain days when you feel like, lack of motivation and stuff. Today is one of those days for me, I guess. No worries. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. We'll go ahead anyway. We'll do it anyway. Cool. So voice is just fine. Okay, let's begin. So we are at page number 28 to be very precise. 28 and total pages in this particular ebook, that is Ego is the Enemy, is 168. So let's begin. Alright. Will you be able to make the most of it, or will you be your own worst enemy? Will you snuff out the flame that is just getting going? What we see in Sermon was a man deeply tied and connected to reality. He was a man who came from nothing and accomplished great things, from rags to riches basically, right? ऐसा होता है ना, अर्श से फर्श से अर्श तक का सफ़र, अर्श से फर्श, मैं उल्टा बोल रहा हूँ, फर्श से अर्श तक का सफ़र, राइट, रैक्स टू riches. What we see in Sermon was a man deeply tied and connected to reality. He was a man who came from nothing and accomplished great things without ever feeling that he was in some way entitled to the honors he received. In fact, he regularly and consistently deferred to others and was more than happy to contribute to a winning team, even if it meant less credit or fame for himself. It's sad to think that generations of young boys learned about Pickett's glorious cavalry charge, a Confederate charge that failed, but the model of Sherman as a quiet, unglamorous realist is forgotten, or worse, vilified. One might say that the ability to evaluate one's own ability is the most important skill of all. Ability to evaluate one's own ability is the most important skill of all. Very important. Don't undermine yourself. Don't feel underconfident, and don't be overconfident as well. Like, you have to balance out, and life in general is always about balancing out things. You know, in extremes, okay, at times you can go to extreme, but you'll have to find the balance in between. Be it in sorrow, be it in happiness, there will always be a balance that you have to establish to get the best out of life, be it in any situation, right? All right. Without it, improvement is impossible, and certainly ego makes it very difficult every step of the way. It is certainly more pleasurable to focus on our talents and strengths, but where does that get us? Arrogance and self absorption inhibit growth, so does fantasy and vision. In this phase, you must practice seeing yourself with a little distance, cultivating the ability to get out of your own head. Detachment is a sort of natural ego antidote. Detach yourself from yourself, basically. If you can do that, then it is a natural ego antidote. It's easy to be emotionally invested and infatuated with your own work. Any and every narcissist can do that. What is there is not raw talent, skill, or even confidence, but humility, diligence, and self awareness. For your work to have truth in it, it must come from truth. If you want to be more than a flash in the pan, you must be prepared to focus on the long term. We'll learn that though we think big, we must act and live small in order to accomplish what we seek. Because we will be action and education focused and forego validation and status. Our ambition will not be grandiose but iterative, one foot in front of the other, learning and growing and putting in the time. With with their aggression, intensity, self-absorption, and endless self-promotion, our competitors don't realize how they jeopardize their own efforts, to say nothing of their sanity. We will challenge the myth of the self assured genius for whom doubt and introspection is foreign, as well as challenge the myth of pained, tortured artist who must sacrifice his health for his work, where they are both divorced from reality and diverse from other people, will be deeply connected, aware, and learning from all of it. Facts are better than dreams. Indeed, facts are better than dreams. So sometimes Delulu is not the only Solulu, it seems, right? As Churchill put it. Although we share with many other a vision of greatness, we understand that our path toward is very different from theirs. Following Sermon and Isocrates, we understand that ego is our enemy on that journey. So that when we do achieve our success, it will not sink us but make us stronger. Okay, so that's the very idea. All right. Talk, talk, talk. Those who know do not speak, those who speak do not know. So, Lao Tzu, we heard this. He is a great philosopher, if I'm not wrong. We have heard about this name in Ashtavakra Mahagita also. Like Osho also mentioned this name many a times. Lao Tzu. All right. Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know. ये हिंदी में जैसे एक वो कहावत है ना, गरजने वाले बरसते नहीं, बरसने वाले गरजते नहीं, तो उसी का ही एक वर्जन आप समझ लो. जिनको पता होता है वो उसके बारे में बात नहीं करते, और जिनको नहीं पता होता है वो बात करते हैं ऐसा, या जो बात करते हैं उनको नहीं पता होता है, समथिंग लाइक दैट. In his famous 1934 campaign for the governorship of California, the author and activist Upton Sinclair took an unusual step. Before the election, he published a short book titled I, Governor of California, and How I Ended Poverty, in which he outlined, in the past sentence, the brilliant policies he had enacted as governor, the office he had not yet won. It was an untraditional move from an untraditional campaign intended to leverage Sinclair's best asset. As an author, he knew he could communicate with the public in a way that others couldn't. Now, Sinclair's campaign was always a long shot and hardly in good shape when they published the book, but observers at the time noticed immediately the effect it had, not on the voters but on Sinclair himself. As Kerry McWilliams later wrote about his friend's gubernatorial bid as it went south, Upton not only realized that he would be defeated and seemed somehow to have lost interest in the campaign. In that vivid imagination of his, he had already acted on the part of I, Governor of California. So why bother to enact in real life? The book was a bestseller, the campaign a failure. Sinclair lost by something like a quarter of a million votes, a margin of more than 10 percentage points. He was utterly decimated in what was probably the first modern election. It's clear what happened. His talk got out ahead of his campaign, and the will to bridge the gap collapsed. Most politicians don't write books like that, but they get ahead of themselves just the same. It's a temptation that exists for everyone, for talk and hype to replace action. The empty text box. What's on your mind? Facebook asks. Compose a new tweet. Twitter beckons. Tumblr, LinkedIn, our inbox, our iPhones, the comment section on the bottom of the article you just read. Blank spaces begging to be filled in with thoughts, with photos, with stories, with what we are going to do, with what things should or could be like, what we hope will happen. Technology asking you, prodding you, soliciting talk. Almost universally, the kind of performance we give on social media is positive. It's more, let me tell you how well things are going. Look how great I am. And that's very true, right? Social media, never trust everything that is presented in social media, right? Because in social media, things are right, but that's just one side of the story. And most of the time nowadays, just for the sake of views and other things, most of the things are not even right, right? So basically, they are only showing the positive side, which is again is a fine deed, but when we as an observer is looking at it, we should consider this, and we should have this thought in our mind that it is just a one part of what they are, you know, facing in their real life. So that's what the author is also trying to point out or emphasize on. Look how great I am. It's really the truth. I'm scared, I'm struggling, I don't know. Right, at the beginning of any path, we are excited and nervous. So we seek to comfort ourselves externally instead of inwardly. There's a weak side to each of us that, like a trade union, isn't exactly malicious, but at the end of the day, still wants get as much public credit and attention as it can for doing the best. Doing the least, not best. That side we call ego. Okay. So basically, we will do less, but we want appreciation for the same. Something like that. The writer and former Gawker blogger Emily Code, a real life Hannah Howarth, if there ever was one, realized this during her 2 year struggle to get a novel published. Though she had a six-figure book deal, she was stuck. Why? She was too busy spending a lot of time on the internet. That's why. In fact, I can't really remember anything else I did in 2010. I tumbled, I tweeted, and I scrolled. This didn't earn me any money, but it felt like work. I justified my habits to myself in various ways. I was building my brand, blogging was a creative act, even curating by reblogging someone else's post was a creative act. If you squinted, it was also the only creative thing I was doing. In other words, she did what a lot of us do when we are scared or overwhelmed by a project. She did everything but focus on it. The actual novel she was supposed to be working on stalled completely for a year. It was easier to talk about writing, to do the exciting things related to art and creativity and literature than to commit the act itself. She's not the only one. Someone recently published a book called Working on My Novel, filled with social media posts from writers who are clearly not working on their novels. Writing, like so many creative acts, is hard. Sitting there, staring, mad at yourself, mad at the material because it doesn't seem good enough and you don't seem good enough. In fact, many valuable endeavors we undertake are painfully difficult, whether it's coding a new startup or mastering a craft. But talking is always easy. We seem to think that silence is a sign of weakness, that being ignored is tantamount to death. And for the ego, this is true. So we talk as though our life depends on it. In actually, silence is strength, particularly early on in any journey. As a philosopher, and as it happens, a hater of newspaper and their chatter, Kierkegaard warned, mere gossip anticipates real talk, and to express what is still is in thought weakens action by forestalling it. And that's what man's gossip anticipates real talk, and to express what is still in thought weakens action by forestalling it. And that's what is so insidious about talk. Anyone can talk about himself or herself. Even a child knows how to gossip and chatter. Most people are decent at hype and sales. So, what is care and rare? Silence. The ability to deliberately keep yourself out of the conversation and subsist without its validation. Silence is the respite of the confident and the strong. Sermon had a good rule he tried to observe. Never give reasons for you what think or do until you must. Maybe after a while a better reason will pop into your head. The baseball and football great Bo Jackson decided he had two things he wanted to accomplish as an athlete at Auburn. He would win the Heisman Trophy and be taken first in the NFL draft. Do you know who he told? Nobody but his girlfriend. Strategic flexibility is not the only benefit of silence while others chatter, it is also psychology. The poet Seod had this in mind when he said, a man's best treasure is a thrifty tongue. So choose your words very wisely, basically. Talk depletes us. Talking and doing fight for the same resources. Research shows that while goal visualization is important, after a certain point, our mind begins to confuse it with actual progress. The same goes for verbalization. Even talking aloud to ourselves while we work through difficult problems has been shown to significantly decrease insight and breakthroughs. After spending so much time thinking, explaining, and talking about a task, we start to feel that we have gotten closer to achieving it. Or worse, when things get tough, we feel we can toss the whole project aside because we have given it our best try. Although, of course, we haven't. The more difficult the task, the more uncertain the outcome. The more costly talk will be, and the farther we run from actual accountability. It sapped us to the energy desperately needed to conquer what Stephen Pressfield calls the resistance, the hurdle that stands between us and creative expression. Success requires a full 100% of your effort, and talk filters part of that effort before we can use it. A lot of us succumb to this temptation, particularly when we feel overwhelmed or stressed or have a lot of work to do. In our building phase, resistance will be a constant source of discomfort. Talking, listening to ourselves talk, performing for an audience is almost like therapy. I just spent 4 hours talking about this. Doesn't that count for something? The answer is no. Doing great work is a struggle. It's draining, it's demoralizing, it's frightening. Not always, but it can feel that way when we are deep in the middle of it. We talk to fill the void and the uncertainty. Void. Marlon Brando, a quiet actor, if there was there was one, once said, is terrifying to most people. It is almost as if we are assaulted by silence or confronted by it, particularly if we have allowed our ego to lie to us over the years, which is so damaging for one reason. The greatest work and art comes from wrestling with the void, facing it instead of scrambling to make it go away. The question is, when faced with your particular challenge, whether it is searching in a new field, starting a business, producing a film, securing a mentor, advancing an important cause, do you seek the respite of talk or do you face the struggle head on? Think about it. A voice of a generation doesn't call itself that. In fact, when you think about, if you realize just how little these voices seem to talk, it's a song, it's a speech, it's a book. The volume of work may be light, but what's inside it is concentrated and impactful. They work quietly in the corner. They turn their inner turmoil into product and eventually to stillness. They ignore the impulse to seek recognition before they act. They don't talk much or mind the feeling that others out there in public and enjoying the limelight are somehow getting the better end of the deal. They are not. They are too busy working to do anything else. When they do talk, it's earned. Makes sense. And that's general tendency, even in men and women also. We, like, for most of the men, I can say that once we accomplish something, then only we tell about things, right? Especially if I can talk about myself, if I'm in a particular process, I'll not prefer to talk about it to everyone else. I'll be like, let me achieve it first and then I can talk about it. And I've seen it in my friends also, a very dear friends of mine. I've seen it, like, even, all right, let's not go in that direction, but I have seen it, like, once they'll achieve it, thereafter they will talk about it, and which is, I think, is a good thing. When they do talk, it's earned. The only relationship between work and chatter is that one kills the other. Okay, so they both cannot go hand in hand. If one is going on, the other will not be there. So that's how they are not directly proportional. They are inversely proportional, as we say in our, like, being from a science background, we use these terms very. Uh, I'll say a lot of time we use these phrases. The only relationship between work and chatter is that one kills the other. Let the other slap each other on the back while you are back in the lab or the gym or pounding the pavement. Plug that hole, that one right in the middle of your face that can drain you of your vital life force. Watch what happens. Watch how much better you get. So start doing things rather than just talking about it. Right. Start small, but start anyway. Right. To be or to do. In this formative period, the soul is unsoiled by warfare with the world. It lies like a block of pure, uncut Parian marble ready to be fashioned into what? Orison Sweet Murden. Okay. One of the most influential strategists and practitioners in modern warfare is someone most people have never heard of. His name was John Boyd. He was a truly great fighter pilot, but an even better teacher and thinker. After flying in Korea, he became the lead instructor at the Elite Fighter Weapon School of Niels Air Force Base. He was known as 40-second Boyd, meaning that he could defeat any opponent from any position in less than 40 seconds. A few years later, he was quietly summoned to the Pentagon, where his real work began. In one sense, the fact that the average person might not have heard of John Boyd is not unexpected. He never published any book and he wrote only one academic paper. Only a few videos of him survive and he was rarely, if ever, quoted in the media. Despite nearly 30 years of impeccable service, Boyd wasn't promoted above the rank of colonel. Huh. On the other hand, his theories transformed maneuver warfare in almost every branch of the armed forces, not just in his own lifetime, but even more so after. The F 15 and F 16 jets, which reinvented modern military aircraft, were his pet projects. His primary influence was as an advisor. Through legendary briefings, he taught and instructed nearly every major military thinker in a generation. His input on the war plans for Operation Desert Shield came in a series of direct meetings with the Secretary of Defense. Not through public or official policy input, his primary means of effecting change was through the collection of pupils he mentored, protected, taught, and inspired. So basically, he was like a unsung hero. There are no military bases named after him, no battleships. He retired assuming that he'd be forgotten, and without much more than a small apartment and a prison, and a pension to his name. He almost certainly had more enemies than friends. This unusual path, what if it were deliberate? What if it made him more influential? How crazy would that be? In fact, Boyd was simply living the exact lesson he tried to teach each promising young acolyte who came under his wing, who he sensed had the potential to be something different. The rising stars he taught probably have a lot in common with us. The speech Boyd gave to a prodigy in 1973 makes this clear, sensing what he knew to be a critical inflection point in the life of the young officer. Boyd called him in for a meeting. Like many high achievers, the soldier was insecure and impressionable. He wanted to be promoted and he wanted to do well. He was a leaf that could be blown in any direction, and Boyd knew it. So he heard a speech later. He heard a speech that day that Boyd would give again and again until it became a tradition and a rite of passage for a generation of transformative military leaders. Tiger, one day you'll come to a fork in the road, Boyd said to him, and you're going to have to make a decision about which direction you want to go. This reminds me of one of the poem, The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost, I guess. Woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep and miles to go before I sleep. You must have heard about it, right? Okay, coming back here. Tiger, one day you'll become a fork in the road, Boyd said to him, and you're going to have to make a decision about which direction you want to go. Using its hands to illustrate, Boyd marked off these two directions. If you go that way, you can be somebody. You will have to make compromises and you'll have to turn your back on your friends, but you will be a member of the club and you will get promoted and you will get good assignments. Then Boyd paused to make the alternative clear. Or he said, you can go that way and you can do something for your country and for your air force and for yourself. If you decide you want to do something, you may not get promoted and you may not get the good assignment and you certainly will not be a favorite of your superiors. Basically, this was the path chosen by the Boyd, I guess. right? But you won't have to compromise yourself. You'll be true to your friends and to yourself, and your work might take a difference, might make a difference. That's what, right? If we are working with any organization, or even if we are working alone, at least that's what I firmly believe in, that we should make a difference. It really should add values. It shouldn't be like you're just completing a task in that 9 to 5 job, and after that you're just, calling it a day and you're done. It's not adding any value in someone else's life. It is not adding any value in your own life. So it shouldn't be like that. At least I'm not a firm believer of it, right? You'll be true to your friends and to yourself, and your work might make a difference. To be somebody or to do something in life, there is often a roll call. That's when you will have to make a decision. And then Boyd concluded with words that could guide that young man and many of his peers for the rest of their lives. To be or to do, which way will you go? Whatever we seek to do in life, reality soon intrudes on our youthful idealism. This reality comes in many forms and many names and forms: incentives, commitments, recognition, and politics. In every case, they can quickly redirect us from doing to being, from earning to pretending. Ego it's in that deception every step of the way. It's why Boyd wanted young people to see that if we are not careful, we can very easily find ourselves corrupted by the very occupation we wish to serve. How do you prevent derailment? Well, often we fall in love with an image of what success looks like. In Boyd's words, the number of stars on your shoulders or the nature of your appointment or its location could easily be confused as a proxy for real accomplishment. For other people, it's their job title, the business school they went to, the number of assistants they have, the location of their parking space, the grants they earn, their access to the CEO, the size of their paycheck, or the number of fans they have. And especially for men, that's whole identity, right? Whenever you meet someone new, so people will only ask you this question: that what do you do? What do you do for your living? That's the whole identity of a man, and for women also. I'm not trying to like, segregate genders, but for men, it is the ultimate thing that I have seen around me and that I have also faced, right? That's their own identity, right? Appearances are deceiving. Having authority is not the same as being an authority. Having the right and being right are not the same either. Being promoted doesn't necessarily mean you are doing good work, and it doesn't mean you are worth of promotion. They call it failing upward in such bureaucracies. Failing upwards, that's something new. Impression people is utterly different from being truly impressive. Impressing people is utterly different from being truly impressive. So there is this gap between the reality and what is, you know shown in front of the people and what is assumed by the society, right? So that's what. So who are you with? Which side still you choose? This is the roll call that life puts before us. So once in your life you'll get such situation basically. Boyd had another exercise. Visiting with or speaking to groups of Air Force officers, he'd write on the chalkboard in big letters the word duty, honor, country. Then he would cross those words out and replace them with three others: pride, power, greed. His point was that many of the systems and structure in the military, the ones that soldiers navigate in order to get ahead, can corrupt the very values they set out to serve. There is a quip from the historian Will Durant that a nation is born stoic and dies Epicurean. That's the sad truth Boyd was illustrating. How positive virtues turn sour. How many times have we seen this played out in our own short lives, in sports, in relationships, or projects, or people that we care deeply about? This is what the ego does. It crosses out what matters and replaces it with what doesn't. A lot of people want to change the world, and it's good that they do. You want to be the best at what you do. Nobody wants to just to be an enemy suit. But in practical terms, which of the three words Boyd wrote on the chalkboard are going to get you there. Which are you practicing now? What's fueling you? The choice that Boyd puts in front of us comes down to purpose. What is your purpose? Our last book, Men's Search for Meaning. Logotherapy. What is the meaning of life? What is your purpose? What are you here to do? Because purpose is help you answer the question to be or to do quite easily. If that matters, if what matters is you, your reputation, your inclusion, your personal ease of life, your path is clear. Tell people what they want to hear. Seek attention over the quiet but important work. Say yes to promotion and generally follow the track that talented people take in the industry or field you have chosen. Pay your dues, check the boxes, put in your time and leave things essentially as they are. Chase your fame, chase your salary, your title, and enjoy them as they come, if that's what matters to you, right? A man is worked upon by what he works on. Frederick Douglass once said he would know he'd been a slave and he saw what it did to everyone involved, including the slaveholders themselves. Once a free man, he saw that the choices people made about their careers and their lives had the same effect. What you choose to do with your time and what you choose to do for money works on you. The egocentric path requires a boy, as Boyd knew, many compromises. If your purpose is something larger than you, to accomplish something, to prove something to yourself, then suddenly everything becomes both easier and more difficult. Easier in the sense that you know now what it is you need to do and what is important to you. The other choices wash away as they aren't real choices at all. So basically, once you'll get the meaning of life, things will become easy to you, right? They are distraction. There are distractions. It's about the doing, not the recognition. Easier in the sense that you don't need to compromise. Harder because each opportunity, no matter how gratifying or rewarding, must be evaluated along strict guidelines. Does this help me? What do does this help me do what I have set out to do? Does this allows me to do what I need to do? Am I being selfish or selfless? In this course, it is not who do I want to be in life, but what is it that I want to accomplish in life. Setting aside selfish interest, it asks what calling does it serve? What principles governs my choices? Do I want to be like everyone else or do I want to do something different? In other words, it's harder because everything can seem like a compromise, although it's never too late. The earlier you ask yourself these questions, the better. Boyd undeniably changed and improved his field in a way that almost no other theorist has since Sun Tzu or von Clausewitz. He was known as Genghis John for the way he never let obstacles or opponents stop him from what he needed to do. His choices were not without their cost. He was also known as the ghetto colonel because of his frugal lifestyle. He died with a drawer full of thousands of dollars in uncashed expense checks from private contractors, which he equated with bribes. That he never advanced above colonel was not his doing. He was repeatedly held back for promotion. He was forgotten by history as a punishment for the work he did. Think about this the next time you start to feel entitled, the next time you conflate fame and the American dream. Think about how you might measure up to a great man like that. Think about the next time you face that choice. Do I need this or is it really about ego? Are you ready to make the right decision or do the prices still glitter off in the distance? To be or to do. Life is a constant roll call. Alright, so we have completed page number 38 over here and we will start our journey from page number 39 in the next live onwards. So this is Boastful Indian. If you have interest in such content, you can subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, universe. Thank you so much, Radharanji. Have fun. Peace out.